Good evening. I'd like to call to order the February 10th, 2021 regular school committee meeting at 5:08 p.m. My apologies for the late start. We were having technical difficulties with our communication. At this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining with employee groups and/or personnel matters. The school committee will reconvene for our public hearing at 6 p.m. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
I
Second,
have a motion. I have a motion and a second to enter executive session. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. We will reconvene for our public hearing at 6 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Mrs. Regan, could you please let me know when we have all of our school committee members present? Having trouble with you having it on the screen and seeing who's here.
Yes.
Hey, Keith, it's Scott. I'm here.
Okay. Mrs. Regan, can you just tell me when all the school committee is in? I can't see what's up on the.
Yes, I see Mr. Cutlass, Ms. Demos, Mr. Wilson, yourself, and I think we're just waiting for Mr. Stadman.
Okay. Courtney, are you ready?
I sure am. I could stop sharing that screen now if you want.
Yeah, no, that's fine. As Brenda can.
Yep.
Yeah.
John,
Okay.
John is in.
Okay. We're all set,
All right.
Courtney. Thank you.
No problem.
Good evening. I'd like to reconvene our regular school committee meeting and turn the floor over to Mr. Libby, our business manager, for our public hearing regarding our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to get my screen shared here. If that work? Can you see that okay?
Yep,
Great.
looks great, Mr. Libby. Thank you.
Great. So welcome to the FY22 Tewksbury Public Schools budget hearing. We always start our presentation here with our district strategy and theory of action, which we keep in mind as we make any decisions here in the district, either fiscally or operationally. The Tewksbury Public Schools community believes that our educational program will encompass a 21st century teaching and learning approach that promotes consistent growth among our students and staff to achieve academic, social, and emotional success for all students. And the theory of action is if Tewksbury Public Schools prioritizes a growth mindset amongst all stakeholders while providing quality professional development and a professional culture grounded in collaboration, then all students will experience innovative, student-centered instruction prioritizing positive outcomes. That was two goals that were put together with our administrative team and school committee over the past couple of years, and we keep in mind as we move through all of our processes here in the school department. The school budget consists of four major parts, three of which are managed by the schools: salary, operating, and capital outlay, and one of which is managed and shared with the town. Our fixed costs. Salary is obviously full-time, part-time wages paid to employees. Operating costs are other expenses such as utilities, maintenance, supplies, transportation, tuition, special education services, things like that. Capital outlay represents larger scale projects on buildings as building improvements or construction projects, things like that. Fixed costs are health insurance, mainly retirement, and debt service that we incur as a school department. Mainly we'll be focusing on the top three, the salary, operating, capital outlay, but there are other costs associated with our school department budget. This slide sort of represents some of the challenges we face in formulating the FY22 budget due to the current pandemic. On the left are the sort of the typical year's procedures or practices, and on the right represents sort of what the situation is here in FY22 that made it a little more difficult than normal to put together a budget for next year. Typically, we know the state budget much earlier than we did this year. It was just announced on January 27th that they would be fully funding cities and towns for changes made under the Student Opportunity Act of 2019. So that was a little tentative time for us in developing our budget. Local revenues tend to develop a predictable pattern due to COVID. They're much less predictable this year. Sales tax, meals tax, hotels tax, things like that weren't as easy to predict what they would look like in FY22. Typically, we are following a traditional school model. We know what the start time, the end time of schools is. Although we hope and we plan for a normal school model for FY22, it's still a little bit unclear at this time what the full school model will look like in the fall. Typically, we use prior year's actuals to determine needs or budget opportunities, areas where we might be a little under budget or a little over budget, work with principals and department heads to kind of adjust for those. With school year 2019-20 shut down for a third of the year, the operations weren't normal. The operations aren't normal this year, so spending trends and patterns are atypical. So it's hard to predict what next year will be or use any data to drive decisions on those, any changes we might make. Normally we use payroll records to roll forward staff. It's a pretty simple process. Usually there's a few retirements, resignations that we have to account for. This year, due to the high number of leave of absence and one-year hires, that was a much more complex process. Sitting with building principals and department heads and going, staff member by staff member on figuring out if they're here for 1 year, if they're coming back next year. So a little more complex than it normally is. Again, meetings with our principals and department heads, usually we're discussing new initiatives and programs or instructional materials, software, tools, things that they might want to bring on. This year, operational uncertainty made it really impossible to plan for any new initiatives or programs for next year. Just everybody's sort of just in survival mode, so planning for new things next year is a little difficult. This is another COVID-related slide. We wanted to get on the radar some potential costs that may be necessary to be funded for school year 21-22. Pool testing, we're just getting into dipping our toe into that program with the help of the state. If we find that it's a successful program to help get more students more in-person learning time, that could continue into FY22. Remote learning will likely continue in some form. I'm not sure what that model will look like in the fall, but there will likely be a remote component to our learning opportunities for students in the fall. Additional transportation costs. If we're trying to bring more students to in-person learning, and there are no changes to the current model of 25 students per bus, we could be looking at some additional transportation costs to get students where they need to be during the day. And then continued or new leave of absence and replacement costs could be incurred during 21-22. Those are a couple more unknowns as we develop our budget. What we do know so far this year, this is the expenditures we've incurred so far this year. Kind of grouped them into categories here, what the expenses were. This column here through November was what was presented in the January budget workshop. Those numbers were basically through November, maybe a little bit into December at that time. These figures here are up to date, sort of representing what we've spent on these categories through January of this year. And this column is the changes to those numbers. So basically 2 months worth of expenses related to COVID at $57,000. Some of those will sort of one-time expenses, maybe won't continue through the end of the year. But I just wanted to give folks an idea of what we're spending on COVID in this environment. So other areas of focus on our FY22 budget, as far as personnel goes, all of our collective bargaining agreements expire in June of 2021. Teachers, aides, custodians, secretaries are all set to expire this year. So that's an unknown area for next year. Typically, we have a good feel for what our salary increases will be, but that's still being worked on. Focus area was assuring, as I said in the previous slide, accurate accounting and tracking of COVID-related leave of absence and one-year replacements hires, making sure we get a good feel for what our staffing was going to look like for FY22. We want to be sure we're funding student services adequately to recover from any COVID-related progress reduction that we've seen in our students due to the different models we're in this year. We're seeing a great amount of collaboration between the schools to ensure maximum utilization of resources. Our K-4 group has been operating as a team for quite a while now. They did an overhaul of our specialists in our K-4 schools a couple of years ago. Make sure we had adequate coverage for our gym, music, PE, gym, phys ed, music, art, and classes like that. So we're making sure we're utilizing our resources to the fullest capacity at all of our schools. Another thing we're keeping in mind is the new elementary schools on the horizon to open in FY23. So this is the last year under our current structure of schools. So any decisions we made, going into next year, we didn't want to have to undo or redo for FY23 when the new school came on board. The areas of technology, security of our network and software. We want to make sure all of our software is FERPA compliant. Tech folks are working to make sure we have student privacy issues in hand. They've also developed a comprehensive device maintenance and replacement program. Based on the life expectancy of the devices that we're purchasing, we know when we're going to need to replace those so that we have working devices in students' hands on a consistent basis. We're working on monitoring systems. We want to be able to predict and get ahead of problems rather than react to them. We don't want to find out the internet's down the first time people get into school. We want to know that ahead of time so we can get it fixed. With technology being so important these days, our systems up and running is vital to the operation. We're also always looking at producing less paper, printing solutions, more efficient ways to do any printing that we do in our school buildings. In the area of building improvements, always looking at our upkeep of our older buildings, school security, building systems, HVAC systems, plumbing, electrical, making sure those are satisfactory, and providing all of our schools with STEM and maker spaces so that students can have that experience in their educational day. So basically, in our three main areas, the school is requesting a 2.5% increase for FY22 in the areas of salary, operating, capital outlay. If we add in the fixed costs, which are a decrease, we'll see a decrease for FY22. We're looking at a 1.33% increase to the overall school budget. Salary represents 70% of the school budget. This slide represents the changes we are anticipating for these employee groups. Most of our changes is in the teacher area. That's obviously our largest group of employees. This should account for any contractual step and longevity increases we know about at this time. And this slide sort of breaks down our salary budget into the groups of employee groups, aides, custodians, maintenance, and again, teachers represent about 68% of our salary budget, which is 70% of our overall budget. So that's where school districts want to be spending money. You want to be spending money on teaching staff and where the actual learning is going on in the classrooms. The operating budget represents 28% of the school budget. That's a little more spread out than the salary categories. Tuition, transportation, supplies, textbooks, and special education services make up a bulk of this $14 million operating budget proposal. Our capital outlay, just 2% of the school budget. The priority we'd like to focus on with this portion of our budget would be the Ryan roof. We had a successful project completed at the Heathbrook School with a roof coating product that we applied. It was a 10-year warranty at the time. We've had no leaks since we've used that application about 2 to 3 years ago. The Ryan roof is close to the end of life. That school opened in '99, so the roof is approaching its 25-year warranty life. We're starting to experience leaking in the school, and they've made improvements in the product. We can get a product with a 20-year warranty as opposed to the 10-year warranty we had on the Heathbrook project, which is very close to what's offered on a brand new roof. So we had an initial estimate done, about $900,000 for the 20-year fix to that roof. We're in the process of putting a bid spec out to possibly complete that project over the summer while there's sort of a lot of work going on in this area geographically with the new school project going on. Thought it'd be a good time to get the roof taken care of while we're already kind of in construction mode on this site. This is a list of capital projects that are still kind of on deck. Some focusing on some areas of security. They're in various stages of progress. Some with our architects working on a concept to replace some of these areas. And this is a sort of a listing of major projects we've completed in the last 3.5 years into this year as well. I won't go through that, but mostly in the areas of school security, technology, and overall building maintenance. We manage 58 separate funds here in the business office. We're trying to reduce the number of funds in conjunction with the town. We had 62 last year. We continue to assess and clean up those funds as some of these activities come to an end or the grants are finished up. We'll be closing out some of these funds and trying to reduce the number of funds that we do have. But all these funds have a specific purpose, must be used appropriately. They must be used through expenses that are related to the purpose of the fund. Whether it's a grant or revolving type fund, we have to spend the money related to how the funds were earmarked. We can't take parking fees from the high school and buy textbooks. We have to spend parking fees on sort of parking fee related expenses. We've had a lot of changes since January, actually, in this area, grant funding. This is what's available to us in FY21, which is usually a pretty good indicator of what will be available in FY22. We don't know what the FY22 grants look like yet. Those generally get announced over towards the end of the school year and over the summer. But highlighted here in yellow are 3 new areas that weren't on the January budget document that we had. Major one here is the ESSER 2 grant that we were informed of during January for COVID-related expenses. Tewksbury is slated to get $1.198 million for COVID-related expenses. The nice feature about this grant is that it extends into fiscal year 2023. Some of these grants have been under a sort of a tight timeline. We're working with the town on making sure we utilize any and all grant funding related to COVID appropriately and in a manner that's best for all departments in the town. So we'll continue to do that in conjunction with Mr. Montori and our other town departments. We also received a special COVID earmark, a special support earmark for $25,000 for COVID-related expenses. This grant expires in June of this year, so that'll be some revenues we'll be looking to spend during the rest of FY21. And the 274 grant for special ed program improvement for $22,000 was received by the town. The 274 and the 298 grant were 2 grants that we had received regularly up until about 5 years ago when the formula changed and we weren't receiving that funding anymore. Apparently the formula has been changed back and we can expect to receive those grants as we go forward here for the next few years. Another sort of big budget related item was we were informed by the Department of Ed that our Title I grant amount, which was $375,000 for this year, FY21, would be reduced significantly during FY22, about $180,000 decrease for us next year. Title I grant is related to poverty levels in town on census numbers from, there's quite a lag. It's from FY18, FY18, FY19. So our poverty levels for children aged 5 to 17 reduced from 4% reduced from 5% to 4%, which is the sort of the magic number that gets a portion of that Title I funding. So we won't be receiving that next year. Overall, this is what our budget will look like at town meeting currently, with the fixed costs sort of expanded, showing our health insurance, retirement, other costs associated with the school department and our debt as well. Next steps, we will continue to keep our eye on any news that has a fiscal bearing on our budget positions for next year. Work with building principals, department heads to react to using our resources as best as we see fit for the district. This process will likely continue from now through May town meeting, and will produce some movement within our overall budget, represented by sort of these arrows. We may move some money from one pot to the other, but we're quite confident that we can operate successfully with the $69,637,971 figure that meets the town manager's recommendation. Lastly, just like to note that this presentation, along with more detailed fiscal information at the account level, will be available on the business office page of the Tewksbury Public Schools website. And with that, I will turn it over to Chairman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Litt. I'll start with Mr. Cutlass. Do you have any comments or questions, concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I'd just like to thank Mr. Libby. Very clear, thorough, and good presentation. So I just want to thank Mr. Libby. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, and we'll go to our clerk, Mrs. Demos.
Sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting. Mr. Libby, I just wanted to go back to the potential spending page that we received in our packet. And under the potential spending was pool testing. And I was looking to see if I could get some more information with that. I know that some districts are using local universities for volunteers and hospitals and things to help out to curb the cost of the pool testing and having, not having to pay this for staff members coming in and things. How does Tewksbury stand as far as our plan for that? Or are we just really in the early stages?
Yeah, Chris, you want to take that? You're on mute, I think.
Chris, are you there?
No.
Mr. Libby, are you not getting anything either?
No.
I tried to unmute him, but it wouldn't let me.
Maybe Mrs. Regan?
That's Chris. He just called. He couldn't get his mic unmuted, as we all know, but part of our presentation later in new business around more in-person time on learning for students, he'll address the pool testing.
Okay, I was just looking at it as a budget line item versus logistics of it. So that was more my question for Mr. Libby, was the funding that goes along with the pool testing and what that would mean for the town.
This will update that piece as well, Shannon.
Okay. And then, Dave, could you just confirm for me the leave of absent costs that are under potential as well? What would the date be that we know the teachers' intentions of returning so that we can sort of plan accordingly for those budget lines as well? Because I know that some of these teachers that are on leave may have been some veteran teachers that are replaced by first year teachers, and we know that's a cost savings that we could have into this budget before we make any cuts that are unnecessary. If you could just share with me any information you have as far as when we intend to know the intent of the staff on leave.
Again, I think that would be
Chris.
Yeah, Chris' question.
Around the budget.
He's been kind of handling all those leaves
Okay.
at his level, and I don't believe we have a known deadline or anything that we would need to hear from teachers. I believe that would all be sort of subject to negotiation.
Okay. And then on the page that's area of focus under our department budget packet, I'm looking at the custodial overtime, and it's a bigger jump than I had expected to see. Can you just speak to that line item, what that would speak to?
Yeah, that's sort of enhanced cleaning. Every time we have a reported positive case in the district, we undertake enhanced cleaning in our schools. So our overtime, with the spike that we saw November, December, and our payroll lags a little bit behind by a couple of weeks. So we started seeing those costs come in related to performing enhanced cleaning related to COVID.
Okay. And then my other questions, I think we'll have to wait until after we hear back from Chris. So thank you.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you, but let's go to Mr. Wilson. Hold that thought, Mr. Malone.
I just would say thank you, Dave, for it's funny. I think this is our third time through now. Every time I look at it, I pick up another nugget of something that maybe didn't sink in the first time through. So just thank you for being thorough and making it easy to understand. And just thank you.
Yep. Very well.
And Mr. Stadman?
I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing. I'll yield to Mr. Malone to follow up to Mrs. Demos, if you don't mind at this time, Sue.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Yes, on the cost-wise, we'll talk more about the pool testing in the school committee presentation, but cost-wise, we've been approved and accepted into the pilot program from DESE, which is free up and through March 28th. After that time, we've looked at significantly at operationally the capacity of our nurses and some other things like that. It would take some significant logistical support from an outside agency to support us with that. Some of the districts that we've talked to that are engaged in that are spending between $20,000 and $30,000 a week right now to support pooled testing. So I'm not sure if that's the target piece we would have to look at after the free pilot program with DESE, but we'll know a lot more once we're into that pilot, what the overall cost would be moving past March 28th.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. And thank you, Mr. Libby, for your update. Always informative and appreciated by us. So at this time, I would like to call to order and reconvene the regular school committee meeting at 6:32 p.m. And before we get started, I would just ask that we take a moment to bow our heads and observe a moment of silence to two very important people that we lost in January relative to the school and our town. The first is Mr. Charles Arulis, who passed away on January 31st and who has served as our town council since 1968. And last but not least is Patricia Mcdonald, who passed away on January 17th in Colorado. She started with the district in 1971. She was a valued member of the kindergarten program at the Heathbrook. And joined the facility at the John Ryan School, where she served for over 35 years. Our thoughts and prayers are certainly with the McDonald and Zarulis family. Thank you. All right. As a preliminary matter, my name is Keith Sullivan. I'm the chairman of the Tewksbury School Committee. And at this time, I would ask that you please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda this evening are present, can hear me, and consent to be recorded tonight. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Cutlass?
I consent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
I consent.
Thank you. Mr. Stadman?
I consent.
Mr. Wilson?
I consent.
And the chair consents as well. Staff, I would please ask you to do the same. Superintendent, Mr. Malone.
I consent.
Our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Regan.
I consent.
Our Business Manager, Mr. Libby.
I consent.
Our anticipated guest speaker, young Jack Stadman.
I consent.
Thank you, Jack. And others present this evening, and my apologies if I missed someone. Principal McGinnis.
I consent.
Thank you. Principal Weir.
I consent.
Principal Cronin.
I consent.
Thank you. Principal Harding.
I consent.
Principal Chanenovic.
I consent.
And is that it for principals this evening?
Mr. Chairman,
And
I'm here with Mr. Drew.
sorry, do we have the athletic director, Mr. Ron Bruin?
I consent. Mr. Chair, Mr. Bernard is right here as well.
Great. And Principal Bernard?
Yes, sir, I consent.
Thank you very much. And our nurses as well this evening that hopefully are in attendance. Miss Sandra Miller. Miss Kelly Constantino.
I consent.
Thank you. Miss Kathy Corsland. Miss Karen Rossi.
I consent.
And Miss Jill Robinson.
I consent.
Thank you. Is there anyone else you see there, Mrs. Regan, that I may have missed?
I think Kathy popped in with the consent and,
Yes.
okay, thank you, Kathy.
Okay, great, thank you. Good evening, as I stated, I'm not sure if I stated earlier, tonight is an open meeting of the Tewksbury School Committee. It is being conducted remotely consistent with the governor's orders due to the outbreak of COVID. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. To participate, please call 781-565-8134. For this meeting, the Tewksbury Public Schools is convened by WebEx as posted on the town's website, which identifies how the public may join, view live through televised cable channels Comcast 22 and Verizon 34, or at youtube.com/Tewksbury TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and is aired live, and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that people may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the district website or by request through Gail Johnson at gjohnson@tewksbury.k12.ma.us. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda item unless otherwise noted. Let me cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And if anyone has a comment or question, it can be submitted in the chat window and you will be recognized when appropriate. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you, and please state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair. And for Citizens Forum, I will first ask any member of the public who wishes to speak to identify himself or herself for the record. Once recognized, that person will have up to 3 minutes to comment on any current or previous agenda item. And finally, each vote taken at this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. With that, I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Malone for our recognition this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly tonight we have a very worthy group of individuals to recognize. I have to reflect a little bit to last Sunday's Super Bowl when the NFL decided to host many first responders and nurses as actual guests of the Super Bowl. And this group would have been very deserving to be in attendance at that, because that's the kind of work that they do. And our nurses in this district certainly did not sign up
for what we've all been dealing with since last March, and their ability to respond to this, not only working directly with students, but working with families, working with staff members, providing that level of comfort and support, their medical understanding of this virus, and the ability to make those tough phone calls to families that may be identifying someone as a close contact, and having a soothing voice on the end of that phone that gives them confident advice in a plan to deal with in a very unknown time. These are the everyday experiences of our school nurses, and we're so thankful for them. They're true heroes among us. They're not only medical personnel, nurses, first responders, but they're educators as well. So they hit all the boxes on people we need to be honoring as part of all the things we do, and any ability to get students in person for school is really due to all these individuals' work. I'd just like to go through them by name. Mackenzie Connery at the high school, Amy Cannell at the Wynn, Kathy Korslin at the Trahan, Deb Creightonberg at the Ryan, Sandra Miller district-wide, Angie Reaney at North Street, Jill Robinson at the Dewing, and Karen Rossi at the Heathbrook. I did leave off one name rather on this, and that is Miss Kelly Constantino, our lead nurse. Certainly, our ability to have any semblance of schooling for students has a lot of support and a lot of great work done by many people on this meeting right now, from the school committee to the administrators, all of our teachers, our custodians, our secretaries, our food service workers, everybody that's been in support and done their piece to have kids in school. However, for the town of Tewksbury, there is one singular person that stands above all, I think, that has been the key to us having students in school and having quality education for our students. And that's our lead nurse, Ms. Kelly Constantino. Her guidance, her dedication, her ability to navigate DESE, medical regulations, and really drill down to what's best for kids every day has just been such a significant reason why we've been able to educate students effectively in the district. Without her leadership, without all the nurses taking part, I'm going to add one more name to this, our retired lead nurse, Elaine Walsh, who's also been helping out quite a bit in the schools. Without this level of work that often goes unseen, there is absolutely no way we would be having in-person learning for students. And we're extremely thankful for them, and we're extremely proud. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. I'd like to also add, before I open it up to my committee members, and I'll yield the floor after that to Mrs. Demos, our clerk, to read the proclamation. I just wanted to add, when COVID originally hit, it was obviously a priority that everyone was safe, and I just want everyone out there in the public to know not only how much they've done to ensure the safety of our students by being ready to go right from the get-go, but even prior to that, when the town reached out and they needed resources, that these nurses were the first ones to say, we'll go to work. And I know, correct me if I'm wrong, through Susan Sawyer, Mr. Malone.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to add that piece. It's not just the school and our children that they've done so much for. It's also our community, and I just wanted to make sure that I recognize them for that, and certainly express our sincere gratitude on behalf of the town and our school for all that you have done and that you'll continue to do for our students and our community. So with that, I'm going to yield the floor to our clerk, Mrs. Demos, to read tonight's recognition. I think you're on mute, Mrs. Demos.
Oh, sorry about that. Whereas Kelly Constantino, district lead nurse, and the building nurses Deb Creightonberg, Amy Cannell, Sandra Miller, Karen Rossi, Angela Rini, Kathy Korsland, Mackenzie Canini, and Jill Robinson are dedicated, compassionate medical professionals for the Tewksbury Public Schools and the entire community who bring consistent, caring, and comprehensive medical care during this global pandemic to the students and families of Tewksbury. Whereas Kelly, Deb, Amy, Sandra, Karen, Angela, Kathy, Mackenzie, and Jill continue to prioritize the health and safety of students, families, and community through adherence of the COVID-19 protocols, contact tracing individuals, communicating with staff and families about the protocols, and addressing the daily medical needs of the student body at each building. And whereas we offer our gratitude and appreciation for their efforts to assist the high school athletics during their difficult times, Kelly, Deb, Amy, Sandra, Karen, Angela, Kathy, Mackenzie, and Jill exemplify the qualities inherent of compassionate and motivated nurses. Whereas Kelly, Deb, Amy, Sandra, Karen, Angela, Kathy, Mackenzie, and Jill have brought great pride, recognition, and honor to the Tewksbury Public Schools and to the town of Tewksbury. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tewksbury School Committee applauds, honors, and recognizes the many efforts of Kelly Constantino, Deb Creightonberg, Amy Cannell, Sandra Miller, Karen Rossi, Angela Rini, Mackenzie Canini, Kathy Korsland, and Jill Robinson. On behalf of the Tewksbury District Leadership Team, submitted by the Tewksbury School Committee, dated the 10th day of February 2021. I'd like to personally thank all of you for all of your time and dedication to all of those families in Tewksbury. It does not go unnoticed, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Demos. And we'll go to the Vice Chair, Mr. Cutlass, for any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just want to thank all the nurses for their hard work during this pandemic over the past year. They've been great. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Jamie said. I mean, it's been a crazy year, and having this team there to handle questions and concerns and deal with all the craziness, the chaos, the fear. I mean, they really are in a position where they're dealing with so many people from across our community, and it's really a difficult thing when they're making these calls, getting these calls, and hearing from concerned parents and students. So I can't even come up with words that properly give you the credit that you deserve for how tremendous you've been to our community. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Stadman?
Yeah, and echoing, Jamie, Shannon's, and Scott's words, in addition to that, you've also compounded your pre-COVID work on top of everything else. The scrapes, the bruises, the sniffles, the hey, I think I had this, I ate this by mistake, and I sniffed a crayon up my nose, and hey, all this other crazy stuff. It's absolutely incredible what you guys are doing. So keep going forward. I guess there's a light at the end of this tunnel for everybody, and then you'll get back to the runny noses and all this other crayon fun as well. So keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Stadman. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Constantino if she would like to say anything.
Yes, thank you. I just want to really shout out to my nurses. I mean, I have the best team. I really do. They've made my job a lot easier, just helping me problem solve and really come up with a plan. I couldn't do it without them. The administration has been amazing, backing me, backing all of us, giving us anything that we need, all the support we need. So I have to thank every one of you guys as well, because you've made it that much easier for us in this, difficult time. But thank you for the recognition. It really does mean a lot.
Well, it's unfortunate we couldn't have you in, and hopefully once we can have people in, superintendent, I'm sure we'd like to have this group of wonderful employees be the first group to come in, and we can actually maybe give them a genuine, more in-person show of gratitude. So not just you, Kelly, but to all of your staff, those that are here tonight, and those that couldn't make it, once again, we're so appreciative for all of your efforts and grateful for all that you do. So thank you very much. All right. With that, I am going to yield the floor to Mr. Young Jack Stadman for our student representative report. Mr. Stadman, are you there, Jack?
Yes, it appears my camera's not working, so.
Okay. I can hear you.
We've had a very busy month at Tewksbury Memorial High School. A large section of our DECA team will be moving on to states finals next month. Great job to all those who have participated, and congratulations to those who are moving on. The International Club is now hosting a shoe drive in which they're collecting new and used shoes for kids in need around the globe. Our esports team is still up and running. They have been placing high within other schools from New England in games such as Rocket League and FIFA. They're always looking for new members. See the morning update for more details. The Tewksbury Memorial High School Drama Club released their version of Check Please last weekend. Great job to both the acting team and the editing team. The Student Council is holding their weekly meetings to discuss new virtual activities for the school, and they'll be holding a school-wide fundraiser within the coming months. And as always, the morning update is still broadcasting. You can tune in every morning on YouTube, especially on Wednesdays. That is all I have for you today, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Stadman. Seeing no presentations, I'll take a moment to check in with Courtney to see if we have any callers for Citizens Forum.
I got nothing so far.
Okay. I'll check back in a minute or two, and in the meantime, I'd like to move along to the approval of minutes with our clerk, Mrs. Demos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the minutes of January 13th, 2021.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the January 13th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. And we'll stay with the clerk for our submission and payment of bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the school department payroll for the period ending January 21st, 2021 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown in a total amount of $1,358,270.14.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll period ending January 21st, 2021 in the amount of $1,358,270.14. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you, Mrs. Demos. And the final bill?
Yes, thank you. I move the school department payroll for the period ending February 4th, 2021 to be approved and certified in the amounts and categories as shown for a total amount of $1,366,251.35.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the payroll period ending February 4th, 2021 in the amount of $1,366,251.35. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much, Mrs. Demos. And before I turn it over to the superintendent, I'll check in one final time with Courtney. Courtney, do we have any callers?
I do. Is it okay if I put him on?
Sure, please do.
Alrighty, you're live, sir. Go right ahead.
Good evening, you're on.
Yep, you're on. Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, here we go.
All right, you're all set.
Hi, Mr. Chair, how are you?
Good.
Oh, can you hear you?
Could I just get your name and address for the record, sir?
Of course, yes. This is Rich Russo. My address is 20 Plunkett Way.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I feel the need to strongly advocate for getting our kids back to school full-time in person ASAP for those families that wish to take advantage. I know that you have that coming up in your new business agenda for this evening, and I just want to share some of my thoughts about it, because I do feel that obviously this would require a lot of planning logistically around lunch and transportation specifically. But these are items that have been discussed at a lot of different levels. Specifically, I know the task force on several occasions, and both representatives from those areas have agreed that this is doable from their perspectives. You know, you have about 80% of families in the district that want their kids back to school full time. The science is clear. Schools have not been a source of transmission. I understand the initial hesitation about it at the beginning of the school year. However, we are now 5 months into it, and both students and teachers appear to have adjusted very well to the various safety protocols. Leaders at all levels of our state, as well as various levels within federal and national agencies, have made it crystal clear there is no reason why our schools can't open. If we need more proof, look to the private and charter schools that have been doing it throughout our state, or look at other states that have been doing it the entire school year, specifically in the South and Midwest. We can't be worried about community transmission in the 2 to 8% range that Tewksbury has been in for the last several months, because that has not translated into our schools in the form of any outbreaks, even after the frivolous worry about the holiday vacation back in December. If for some reason at any point this did translate, we have set up the necessary steps as a district to pivot, or for a school to pivot, as it was in line with the DESE requirement. The fact remains that from the outset, we have heard the phrase "only when it's safe." It is my belief and the belief of many of our families in this district that we have proven it is safe by the lack of transmission in our schools. The reality is that the district has invested a significant amount of money to put safety protocols in place, and they all have worked. I would like the committee to consider that these are working and plead for them to vote sending our kids back full time. You might hear about needing the vaccine to feel safe. I implore the committee to disregard that statement, as again, all of our officials have made it crystal clear that the vaccine is not necessary to safely reopen, and once again is evidenced by the lack of any outbreak currently. You might hear as well about pool testing. Let's see how that goes. I again implore the committee that with only 12 active cases currently in our whole district, and the fact that it is being safely monitored by the nurses that were just recognized, I don't understand how pool testing is going to add a level of safety. We know that the kids are a real source of transmission based on the many reports that we have received at the state level. I appreciate the committee taking the time to listen to my arguments for pushing the vote of bringing our kids back to school full time ASAP. They need it now more than ever. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. And I'll start with the vice chair if you have any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Russo's points were right on, and I agree with 99% of what he said. And when the CDC, our number one health organization in the country, says it's safe to bring the kids back, then we should seriously consider moving in that direction. And I think his points are well taken, and I think he made them very well. And I think that's the direction we should be moving in as quickly as we can, as best we can. And if something happens, if things change dramatically, we can reassess at that point. But I think with 12 cases in the district, we should really be moving forward. More in-person learning for our kids. 80% of the parents want that, and I think we should try to accommodate that. That's what I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler. Mr. Demos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank Mr. Russo for calling in and taking the time to share his thoughts with us that we will happily take under advisement, and his points are well taken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I would echo what my colleagues previously said. One, thank you for calling in. We appreciate hearing from parents. Two, I would agree. I'd like to see us get the students back to school safely, keeping our staff safe and keeping our students safe. And I know that there have been a lot of discussions around how to do it, and I think we need to continue to push to make that happen. So thank you for calling in.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Stadman.
I appreciate the callers' comments and concerns. I think, as he mentioned, obviously there's a lot of information out there, and we need to make a decision, obviously, not only as a school committee, but also as a district, to see if it works out for all the players, within the district. Thank you,
All right.
Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Stadman. Before we proceed any further, Courtney, is the caller still on the call? We're getting some going. Can you just ask the caller if he's done to hang up? I think we're getting that feedback through either phone or the or his TV or.
Yep. So he hung up. I actually had to put on my my speakers and my other mic. That's why there's feedback. I apologize.
Yeah,
But he hung up now.
No worries, and I'll just echo what my colleague said. I certainly thank you for your input and your call. I agree with a lot of what you said. Also, as we've said throughout this entire process, we are working. We continue to work. We have worked, I think, somewhat effectively and collaboratively with the unions. We're going to continue that process, and I look forward to Superintendent Malone's update. But yes, I do share that, as does Mr. Cutlass, we should look at this and make sure we're doing it right. But I can tell you, me personally, we can't have enough in-person time for our students. But it's certainly something that we're going to continue to discuss. And as a committee, it sounds like we're going to push for. So, caller, thank you for your call. Is there anyone else that has called in, Courtney?
It looks like that was the only person I have for today.
Okay. With that, I will yield the floor to Superintendent Malone for his superintendent report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick updates. One was a data point. We were pretty excited this week on the reopening task force to acknowledge the fact that the town's positivity rate went down to 4.14%, which brought us from the red into the yellow as a town. We've been in the red for a couple of months, so this is pretty good news. And hopefully, if we can keep that number trending in that direction, it'd certainly be a good indication of the safety in the schools, and hopefully encourage us to keep moving in that direction. In addition, I think the caller mentioned it, we had 12 overall cases right now in the district. Typically, we've been up and over 30 for the past couple months, so this is great news as well. And that's only 3 cases in the past 7 days. So this is all good information. Again, this is week to week, so we need to really focus on those pieces that are in place that got us to this point and make sure that we can maintain them. So it's a good indicator, but it's probably a little bit early to celebrate that this data is a trend just yet. Just a reminder out there, it's Black History Month. We did send out some resources to parents and identified some resources that are being utilized in the school. And certainly diversity and equity is a big piece of our ongoing professional development in the district. So certainly this is a great month to celebrate that. Congratulations out there to our head of guidance at Tewksbury Memorial High School, Ms. Kenan Daniel, who was nominated for the College Board Counselor Recognition Program. Just a great honor, and appreciate all her work, and really for all our guidance counselors, our school adjustment counselors, our school psychologists. It's National School Counselor Week. Was this past week, so a great celebration and recognition of all of them for all their hard work. A quick special education update. The special education department has been able to hire on a part-time basis 2 additional occupational therapists and 1 speech language therapist. Again, the impact of COVID-19. We, as all districts, have a significant amount of compensatory services owed to families due to the fact that we were out of school since last March. So we've brought on some additional staff to help offset that. Again, some of that spending comes out of that COVID money and specific elements, but this is the kind of thinking now that we have to employ. This will go on certainly after we're past this pandemic, but we want to start addressing it now. Quick development from the elementary school building committee. One of the elements that everyone will need to be aware of is that in the construction timeline of the new elementary school building project, likely we are going to have to relocate out of the center school prior to taking residents in the new school. And we'll have to be temporarily housed at a yet to be determined location. So that's something certainly we'll have to be working around here at the center school. Town manager, Mr. Montori, has been very helpful with us. So we're currently looking at what those options may be, but we're likely going to have to vacate this location prior to the new building being operational. And just a quick reminder, and we'll put something out for our families and staff tomorrow. Just a quick reminder, please, during this upcoming February vacation next week, adhere to the state travel orders and advisories. Please be careful. Please watch the state limiting size of gatherings. And please, students, you've all just done such a great job in school every day, wearing a mask, following the protocols. Do that over vacation. We've got some good numbers trending our way. We want to keep it that way. We want everyone to have fun. We want everyone to get a rest over vacation, enjoy themselves, but we really want to make sure they do it safely because we've got some trending data here that will help us. We want to keep it going in that direction. With that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if anyone had any particular questions.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. I'll start with Mr. Cutlass. Any questions?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm all set. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Demos.
All set tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I am all set. Thank you.
And Mr. Stadman.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Regan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first of the updates is it pertains to the annual school and district report card. This is an annual event where Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education publishes our district, as I said, in school report card. This report card includes multiple measures of a school and district's performance, providing information on student achievement data, teacher qualifications, student learning opportunities, attendance data, discipline data, much more. You'll remember that last year we did not participate in the Mcas assessment system, so the performance and accountability data in the current district and school report card still points back to 2019, where the district and schools made substantial progress. Some areas, though, I'd like to highlight as at the meeting tonight that we're very proud of and should be noted. You'll see in the report card that 90.4% of our teachers have been teaching in Massachusetts public school for at least 3 years, and 100% of our teachers are licensed teachers. District-wide, 85% of our students have participated in art courses, which include visual art, music, theater, dance, and general arts. 76% of our 11th and 12th grade students have completed at least one advanced course, which can include advanced placement courses, international baccalaureate courses, Project Lead the Way, and dual enrollment college credit courses at various different colleges in Massachusetts. So there are many other rigorous courses our students are also participating in. Again, there's a lot of information. A letter will go home in our weekly update to parents, where parents will have the link to both the district report card and all of the schools' report cards as well. Next, I'd like to talk about another letter that went home to parents. This is an opportunity that our schools will be participating in. It's a pilot student survey called the Social and Emotional Learning Indicator System, or the SELUS survey. This is a partnership, a collaboration, if you will, between the Tewksbury Public Schools and, again, DESE, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We will be piloting a social and emotional learning, most people hear that acronym as SEL, survey for our students in grades 4, 5, 8, and 10. This survey is meant to measure the SEL 5 core competencies: student self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, interpersonal relationships, and responsible decision-making skills. The student responses, which will be an aggregate data results, will be provided to the school district by the end of this school year. Next school year, DESE will train our district, our administrators, to not only administer this survey to our students, but also analyze this data on our own. The survey will take place in school on March 3rd, 2021. The parents have requested some sample questions, which Dr. Basteri, our grant coordinator, is providing. As I said, these are questions that revolve around those 5 core competencies. For example, students will be asked, how hard or easy is it for you to do the following? When working on assignments, even when they're hard, how hard or easy is that for you? With social awareness, how hard or easy is it for you to wait for others to finish talking before I speak? So these are social emotional learning and development skills. When we receive that data through this survey, it's really going to help us to improve our SEL program and supports for students in the district. So I just want to thank Dr. Basteri, Karen Baker O'Brien, our Student and Family Support Director, and certainly our principals for helping to administer this survey to our students in the upcoming month of March. The next of my updates is an exciting time of the year. Last Thursday, February 4th, we began our kindergarten registration process, and it always starts with a presentation. And this presentation this year was virtual due to the ongoing pandemic. Ms. Baker O'Brien, our 2 principals, Ms. Terry Garish and Felicia Chinanovich, along with our ESL lead teacher, Karen Hodgson, and certainly our kindergarten staff, provided an amazing amount of information through a virtual video. Parents got to see and hear some of the details around registering their child for kindergarten, which, by the way, is our class of 2034 coming in. They also received a mailer home, which gives all the pertinent information around registering the child for kindergarten. That registration process happens right after February vacation. And if parents did not get to see the video or get the mailer, all of this information is posted to the district website at the Student and Family Support webpage on the district site. And then finally, I'd like to remind all the families that next week is February vacation, but this Friday is an early release half day for students and staff. And we will be sending that out again as a reminder tomorrow to all of our parents and to our families, because the student early release dismissal time is slightly earlier than the hybrid Friday schedule. So we want to remind parents the students will be coming home just a little bit earlier than typical Friday. That completes my updates for tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Regan. Mr. Cutlass, any questions?
No, Mr. Chair, all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Demos?
No, Brenda, I'm wondering, the presentation itself, is that linked on the website as well for those parents that missed the night but may need to, as first time families entering in, would they have the opportunity to watch it?
Yes, it's not only posted to the district webpage as well as on the Tewksbury YouTube TV channel.
Because I'm thinking that, some of them may not even know their district. So I like that Mara's contact is on there so they know which school to contact for any information. Yeah, I think will we do a second night of this, like another information for the parents closer to, after April vacation maybe or something? Or was this the one time we're going to offer this?
Well, we'll continue to reach out to every family we haven't heard from, and we get those family names through whether they contact us or through the town census. So Ms. Graffio is very helpful in providing us with that list. But
Right.
yeah, we'll continue to reach out to families who we don't hear from. And as you know, when we get closer to the end of the school year, we'll be looking at planning our orientation and getting families in. And Ms. Garish and Ms. Jananovich are online right now, but we are adapting our kindergarten screener as well this year and providing families the opportunity to give us some video and walk through some of those screening tasks that we do with incoming.
All the screenings will be virtual as well then.
So there'll be many more opportunities to talk to us before they actually register.
Right. No, I'm just thinking of those families with the first timers coming in, right? That they don't really know what they don't know just yet. So I was just looking to make sure that we're getting that information out there in a timely manner, and some just, it may not be on their radar just yet as, February. Although I love that we're proactive and this is the typical time of kindergarten registration, there may be some stragglers out there that I was just thinking of.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. That's all I have for tonight.
Sure.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Mr. Wilson?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stadman?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have no questions as well. I just wanted to touch base with you, Mrs. Regan, before I ask my colleagues if we have anyone has any questions or comments on the consent agenda. Is there anyone? See, the principals are here again, which is wonderful. Is there anyone that wishes, as part of the consent agenda, to speak on that, Ms. Regan, that you're aware of?
I just asked that Ms. Garish and Ms. Jananovich are online still. I see them both here. If you'd like to add anything that our kindergarten parents or our preschool parents who may be watching need to know, feel free to chime in now.
Sure. Why don't we start with Mrs. Cronin, please?
Ms. Jananovich.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Oh, you need to unmute, Felicia.
We should know this by now. I think the video is really comprehensive and I think it's a great place to start. Terry and I are always available if families need to reach out with more specific questions. Would be happy to answer them anytime.
And I think speaking to Mrs. Demos's question too, is our office staff takes the town census information, and anyone we haven't heard from, we proactively call and contact them because we want to make sure that that everyone knows. Because you're right, if you've moved into town, you don't know that you're going to look on a certain page on a certain website. So we will look out for them. And Alexis Bosworth, who are our preschool coordinator and assistant principal at the Dewey, did a fabulous job creating a virtual screening opportunity for preschool families, and has then worked with the kindergarten teams from both the Heathbrook and the Dewing to create a similar system for families for those entering kindergarten. So we're very grateful for her work and her collaborative work. And I think we've got a number of things, hopefully, that can answer all of our families' questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Mrs. Garish and Mrs. Jananovich. At this time, I'm going to check in with my colleagues on tonight's consent agenda to see if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns. Stop.
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mrs. Demos?
Nothing for tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Stadman?
No questions, thank you.
And Mr. Wilson?
I have no questions either, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
I'd like to make a motion to accept tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. The consenter is approved. Moving along to tonight's committee reports, we'll start with the elementary school building. Mr. Cutlass, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, everything's still status quo. We're on time, on budget. They finished the steel frame. We had a little signing ceremony. Yourself, Mr. Chair, myself, Mrs. Stronach from the Selectmen, Mr. Malone, and Mrs. Regan all signed the final piece of steel that they put up. I think that's a tradition in the building and trades whenever they're doing a building. So we did that the other day, but everything is moving along well, and everything looks good so far. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you very much. On time and on budget. Sure, our residents and our students and all of the people that are going to be working in that beautiful new facility are happy to hear that. So, the Tewksbury CPAC, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, we had a meeting last month. Rick did a great job answering some questions. We talked about some of the program that was upcoming, and things are moving along well in a positive direction. So that's all I have for this evening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Mr. Stadman for the Wellness Advisory Committee.
I have no updates as of this month, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stadman. We have no policy changes, proposals, or adoptions at this time. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Regan for 2 items under old business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item you have in front of you and in the packet, and again, that we have published to the website, and we'll make sure that every parent receives a copy of this notice, is our next generation Mcas testing schedule, particular to Tewksbury or specific to Tewksbury. Every year, as you know, we take the giant testing window and we pare it down so that parents know exactly what week or dates specifically their child will be testing. This year, we really tried to make it convenient for families, and that is that all students in grades 3 through 8, you can see the ELA test will be administered the exact same week at every grade level within our schools, and similarly for the math MCAS grades 3 through 8. The high school has some particular changes this year. You've heard me say this before, but the 11th graders will be participating in the 10th grade ELA and math MCAS as part of their competency determination for graduation. They'll be participating the same weeks as our 10th graders. And there's a to be announced date for the science, technology, and engineering biology test for our 9th graders. We'll update this memo when we get that date. What I'd like to just inform parents of is there are still details for us to plan. We've narrowed down the weeks for parents, but there are lots of logistics to plan because all of our students in all of the hybrid cohorts, A, B, and C, as well as our remote learning academy students, need to take the MCAS in person at school. So we'll be providing that information as we plan that out in more detail for our families. And as usual, I just want to make note to parents at the bottom of this notice are some really wonderful, useful links for parents, maybe over the February vacation, to practice some of those MCAS-related subject areas with your child. So as I said, this will go home in the notice for parents tomorrow as well. And if there's no questions, I'll move on to the next item, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please do. We'll do the questions after.
Okay, and then in old business, what we have is another update to our 2021-2022 school calendar. You'll notice that we have identified now some of those key dates that families are certainly waiting for, and that is vacation weeks, graduation day, and some of those full day PD days and early release days. What we believe is hopefully the final draft of our calendar. We've cross-referenced it up against religious holidays and other important events like AP testing and what have you. So with your blessing tonight, we hope to publish this calendar to our school webpage.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Regan. I'll start with Mr. Cutlass for any questions or comments.
No questions, Mr. Chair, but do we have to vote on the calendar?
I would request that you do. You've already voted on the first and last day, but now that we've identified some other really key dates, it would be helpful, and then we can publish it for our community.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the calendar as presented by Mrs. Regan.
All right. Let's just hold that motion till we have a chance to make sure everyone, we don't have any other concerns that might arise.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Cutler prior. Mrs. Demos?
So, Mr. Chair, my only question is that I didn't realize it was a final vote for the evening. So, we're sure that none of the dates that we have any that conflict with any religious days or anything like that. That's the only thing I would have taken a look at that I didn't previous to the meeting.
May I comment?
Sure, yes, Mrs. Regan.
I can tell you when Ms. Johnson's online, between Ms. Johnson, Mrs. Cutlass, and our principals, we've reviewed the religious holidays and AP testing. As I said, we've slotted in our Mcas dates. We review that over and over, and you notice the new holiday Juneteenth in there on the 20th. So
Yep.
we look at those dates. I can't guarantee we might not come back as the year progresses, that we may have missed something, but we have definitely worked this calendar up against all religious holidays and feel we have all of the dates chosen appropriately, including our open house and conference nights.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Regan.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Mr. Wilson?
I have no questions on this schedule or on the
Great.
calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Stadman?
I have no questions.
Okay, with that, we have a motion on the floor to approve the 2021-2022 school calendar as presented this evening. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve tonight's school calendar as presented for the school year 2021-2022. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. That will make that an official document. And as always, there's helpful and important announcement and information on the back side of that calendar. So please, for the general public, look at both sides of that. With that, I will stay with Mrs. Regan here for our recommendation to accept the program of studies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, what you have in front of you, and I apologize, I think in the agenda, there's a typo that says it's the 2021 program of studies. This is the 21-22 school year program of studies for our high school. There's a nice memo that highlights some of the changes. I want to just really commend the high school because even through this difficult year, certainly an unusual year, our high school administrative team, our department heads, and our teachers have paid attention to improving some of the courses and adding new courses to the program of studies for our students next year. Particularly, you see that global thought course, which goes hand in hand with students who are on a pathway for the global competency certificate. And these are students who really look to understand and improve the globe, the world, and are working towards that type of community service. So I also want to note that our guidance is updating their process through Calendly. We have merged 2 of the music courses into one, that we've combined those 2 courses to align to the most current art standards, and now also will include a performance component to that new course. We have a new AP course for world history, which is very exciting, and a student support course, a new math lab. I just want to make note too, within the program of studies, there's many links, video links, pathway explanations for students who are looking at particular career opportunities, the courses that best align with those pathways for them. And then kudos to Madison Pierce, who has her wonderful artwork on the cover of the new program of studies. And then just informational for parents with students in the 8th grade through our junior year. They have access to their program of studies now, and it will be published online. Mr. Weir will be working with the 8th grade guidance department as well to inform students how to choose courses for next year. And our high school students will have access over the February break to begin choosing courses. Parents, students, if you have any questions on any of the courses, you're reminded to please contact your guidance counselor for more information.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Regan. And you are looking for a vote this evening, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'd like to start with Mr. Cutlass for any questions or concerns.
No, Mr. Chair, also just happy to see we're adding courses at the high school level, and happy to see that. That's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mrs. Demos?
No questions, just a couple comments that I appreciate all the detail that went into this document, and especially find that the course pathways section of this document was quite helpful. I think that the students coming into high school at some point, not sure which classes to take to get going on a certain route. I think this is very beneficial as a guide to them, and I thank whoever put this together. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
No, I'd just say it's nice to see the addition of some of these courses, and I think it's great. Thank you for all the hard work on putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Stadman?
I agree with my other colleagues. It's great work and continue the work and adding all the additional classes.
Okay. With that, I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendation for the TMHF's 2021-2022 Program of Studies. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the 2021-2022 TMHS Program of Studies. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. And at this time, I'd like to yield the floor to our superintendent for an update and some discussion about how we feel we can get this to some more in-person time for our students. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really wanted to take the opportunity to initiate a discussion this evening on some key points in regards to looking at more in-person time for students. And, obviously this pandemic has been a very trying year. It's challenged for all of us. There's probably not anyone that's completely satisfied with what's going on. And we all just want to be back to normal. But we also have to be safe. We also have to make sure we're making decisions based on what's in the best interest of students. And we have to make sure we're incorporating all stakeholders in kind of looking at those decisions. Ms. Regan, can you go to the next slide, please? So a couple pieces we want to look at tonight, kind of that big question, why? Why look at it now? It's February. We've just instituted increased student learning time, in-person learning time on Wednesdays. What's important here right now at this time frame is we need to have a comprehensive plan ready to go now. Not that we would implement right away, but a plan that is cognizant of everyone's concerns, thoughts, and ideas. The end of this school year will come soon enough. And if we don't put our students in the best position possible to have high quality instructional learning opportunities, and we don't think forwardly now, I'm afraid we're going to miss some opportunities. We're very concerned about the social emotional status of all of our students. On our reopening task force, we had a discussion. One of our task force members works in an emergency room, and the sharp increase in students being seen in the emergency room for psychiatric reasons. The toll of not being in person with peers, the toll of not having that regular school experience, the toll and the pressures of the constant flipping from remote learning to in-person learning. And our staff have just done a fantastic job with this. They've worked really hard. It's just at some point, we have to make sure our students are in the best position possible to learn. And to ignore those social, emotional, and psychiatric issues that are out there would not be consistent with what we believe. We're also looking at the gaps that students have. You know, some of our benchmark testing shows that students are keeping up in a lot of ways, which we're very proud of. Again, hats off to our teaching staff, our support staff, for all the work they're doing under very trying conditions in a hybrid model with students in 3 days 1 week, 2 days the next, afternoons remote. This is very difficult, and I think they're making great gains, but there are still gaps there. Gaps in socialization, gaps in schooling, gaps that if we maintain this all year long, we certainly know that are going to be there, and it's going to take us a while to address that when this pandemic's over. So the sooner we can look at trying to resume to more in-person time, I think we'll reduce those gaps. Also very concerned about how we finish this school year and the impact it'll have on starting next school year. Obviously, we're just very hopeful that this pandemic will continue to trend in the direction it's going to, and with the combination of vaccines, other interventions, the summertime, all those kind of things, we're extremely hopeful to have as close to normal of a school year next year as we possibly can. How we finish this year and what our students' experience are this year is going to be a significant impact on what next year looks like. Any opportunity that we can try to plan for and move towards having all our students return to school in person daily will certainly set that tone for next year. If not, a good portion of next year will be really based on reorienting students to what school is. I discussed in my early report some of those data points on the townwide positivity rate in the school cases. And that was a snippet that I reported, but that's also part of a trend that we've seen over the past 3 to 4 weeks of both those data points going down. They're going down drastically at the state level. We're seeing these pieces going. It's probably too early to call it a significant trend. We hope and pray it is a significant trend, and that's where it's going. And we want to be prepared with a plan when that data tells us it's time to move. It's time to have all kids back in school. So that's why we're really want to address these type of pieces now. We've, spent some significant time looking at stakeholder input. We have a townwide PAC meeting Monday the 22nd. We have a parent survey out there right now. We're continually negotiating with the Tewksbury Teachers Association on navigating more in-person time. We've been doing that really for the past 6 months. And that's how we got Wednesdays identified, and we worked with the teachers union and really took consideration of the concerns that they had and created additional safety measures, and we're able to make that happen. We need that momentum to continue. We're seeing in other districts evidence of things like distancing and time and learning between kids that is different than what we have, yet they're not having any drastically larger spreading or anything of that nature in their districts. We've got some great models out there we need to explore. I think what we're going to see is the districts around us also moving in this direction, and we want to make sure we're keeping ourselves informed of the best practices out there that other districts are doing. There's some districts that are doing fantastic things that we can learn from. The Tewksbury Public Schools Reopening Task Force, more in-person learning time has been a significant topic on the task force. And please remember that task force not only has school committee members on it, but it also has the town manager, Board of Health representatives, police, fire, the teachers union, our nurses, administrators, parents. So as an entity, the task force has really been pushing us to look at more in-person time. And they look at the data every week and analyze those pieces every week. So we're really trying to look at how we can take some of that feeling that's coming out of that task force and put that into action. Impact on Remote Learning Academy. Our Remote Learning Academy is really a success story. We've put a lot of assets into that. We have a lot of resources in there. I think for the most part, what we're hearing from parents of RLA students is they're very satisfied with that. Those students in the Remote Learning Academy are going to be rejoining us in person at some point. It may not be right away, but at some point, and we want to make sure that they're educationally moving at the same pace as our students in a hybrid model or in a full in-person model. So we're not looking to do any drastic changes to the current Remote Learning Academy. It does certainly require a significant amount of our resources, but we feel that we can maintain a Remote Learning Academy, which we're required to by DESE through the end of this year, and still increase in-person learning time for students. We're very cognizant of the staff needs, where staff want to feel safe. They want to know if they're coming to work that they're going to be safe. And hats off to our teachers, our aides, our custodians, our nurses, our secretaries, our food service workers, everyone, because we're one of the few industries that has been full in at work. So hats off to these individuals really putting themselves forward for the benefit of our students. So we want to keep them safe. We've invested in that. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in air purifiers, MERV 13 filters, PPE, hand sanitizer, enhanced cleaning apparatus, significant overtime to custodians to enhance cleaning the buildings and bring in outside resources to continue to clean those buildings. So we're committed to that. We'll stay committed to that. If there's a better way to make these buildings safer, we want to do it. Our staff will do a better job with our students if they feel safe, if they feel their needs are met. They'll do great, and they have done great. So we want to continue to work on that piece. Our overall goal is really to keep focused on providing the best educational opportunity for our students safely. We've made some incremental pieces. I talked about having in-person learning increased to Wednesdays. I think we can still look at multiple opportunities. We put out some ideas and thoughts and some guidance in our parent survey, but that by no means is the only way in which we can do that. We've encouraged our principals, and they are having conversations with staff members at the buildings to see what ideas they have, what ways we can look at this. Ms. Reagan, if you can go to the next slide, please. We've had barriers, challenges, and opportunities related to this pandemic from day one. This goes back a long way. I think what will help all of us if we can shift some of the narrative of this conversation from why we can't do something to opportunities to how we might be able to do that and how we can do that. Staffing is absolutely a challenge. There's no doubt about that. We have 7 to 10 members out on American Disabilities Act leaves. We have over 30 staff members who are accommodated for childcare issues. We have 28 staff members dedicated to the Remote Learning Academy. That's approximately 68 staff members, or 20% or so of our working staff that's not available to us if we increase time for students. That's a factor. I think there's ways we can work with that. I think there's ways we can manage that. Our staff are maxed out. We talked about our nurses not really being in a situation, they're working so hard, there's not more they can do. Most of our staff are in that situation. But we may be able to look at staff differently and look at staffing elements for a longer day or for more people differently. And we want to get those conversations actively going. Transportation, the restrictions on transportation as far as numbers of students that can be on the bus, it's certainly a factor. We think we can work with this. We have a meeting with DESE tomorrow where we believe one of the topics is going to be transportation and some possible alterations to the transportation guidance coming out of DESE. We're prepared to dedicate some funds for additional transportation resources if that's going to be the only difference that keeps us from getting more kids in. So we think we can work a way through transportation. Lunch is still a challenge. Students have their masks down while they eat. It's a piece of the day that requires supervision. These are big changes. I think we can do this. I think we can manage this. We've thought about multiple different locations. We've thought about, accommodation of eating in the classroom, utilizing the cafeteria, getting some dividers, all those pieces, and who's covering lunch, and what is the staffing situation after lunch. We've thought through those things. So I think we can work out a plan that will address that. A big one that's going to be for us to look at as a district is distancing. Right now, with our reopening plan and our MOU with the Tewksbury Teachers Association, distance requirements are at 6 feet. We've been successful with this. Staff members have done an outstanding job keeping students at the appropriate distance. They've done a great job. Students have done a great job following directions and really adhering to the protocols. This is a real success story. There are a significant amount of districts, and they're growing by the day, that are operating in a 3-foot distancing measurement. And they're not having outbreaks. They're managing their protocols, and it's working. We have some pieces to look at for that. What would that look like in our classrooms? How can we manage that? Certainly, I think anyone would consider the fact that what may come with that is additional close contacts identified, and that's a likelihood. But can we manage with 3 feet? 3 feet is a measurement that gets us all students in on the same day. With 6 feet, we can't. How can we manage that piece? How can we keep people safe? Do we need to add in any other pieces or protocols, or purchase any other additional PPE, or bring in shields or anything of that matter? Certainly those are things we're willing to do. But that piece alone seems to be a significant leverage point in the districts we've talked to in the difference in getting all students in on a given day. The pooled testing. We've been selected, we applied, and we're selected by the state. Pooled testing is a huge lift. It's partnering with an additional company. Our company we've been assigned as a vendor is called CIC. We had a meeting with them today. We have another one with them on Friday. I think we have to understand that the pooled testing pilot coming out of DESE, which is a fantastic idea because it gives you up to 6 weeks of free pooled testing. The vendor we talked to today has over 100 districts they're going to be working with. They're all in the same status as us. And probably most of the people that are working for this company weren't with the company 3 weeks ago. So this is going to be a lift. I think it's worth it. I think if it makes people feel safe. I'm not sure the data from that is actually going to pull through with some significant catches. We talked to Haverhill a little bit on some of their experiences and some other elements. I think pool testing, if it makes people feel comfortable, it's a good step in that direction. And if we just catch one scenario where we find someone who's test positive, who didn't know, weren't symptomatic, and we can get them in the right situation and get them help, it's worth it. It's worth it. After the 6-week trial, it's very costly. That's something we're going to have to measure. That's something we're going to have to think about. Many districts are not going to do pool testing for that very reason, that they did not see that the cost of it was worth the benefit. I think we definitely signed up for it, we're selected, and we want to follow through. and certainly pilot this out and make a good, solid decision once we've piloted it out. Vaccine for educators. My personal opinion is this is one of the most disappointing aspects of this whole pandemic. The fact that we have not been able to get vaccine in educators' arms. So this is something we're advocating for. We did a joint letter with myself and the TTA president that went to the governor's office, specific in regards to wanting to put educators higher on the priority list for vaccines. If it was up to me, we'd have all of our staff, we'd shut down school tomorrow and get all of our staff vaccinated if we had the vaccine. I do think, unfortunately, the vaccine is going to be one element we don't have any control over, unfortunately. If we can have any control over, we absolutely will. We were offered up the school as a site for vaccines. I talked to the Board of Health today, offered up our assistance in any way, even offered up our assistance to help them with the current phase they're in, which is those over 75. If we can help them out now and that gets our educators higher on the list, then let's do it. So the vaccine is going to be a big piece, but I'm not sure it's something we're going to have a great deal of control over. Time is our biggest element right now. We've got to do the thinking now, and we've got to make up our minds that either we can get past some of these barriers and challenges or we can't. If we don't decide that now, my concern is that we are, by the time the data trend really shows us and demands that we have kids in, we don't have a great plan. And we'll miss the opportunity. And we'll miss the opportunity to have our kids in school, all in school, on the same day, learning, not worried about alternate remote days, all those pieces, and certainly have a closer to a true instructional experience for all of our kids so that we end the year in that manner, so that when we start the year next year, our students are really ready to go. This pandemic is going to be, in my estimation, a 3 to 5 year plan to try to make up the academic and social emotional needs that have been created by this pandemic. And the sooner we can attack that and go after that, I think the better off all of our kids will be. So these are some of those considerations that we're really trying to get out there and some of the thinking we're trying to get out there. We want to make sure that we could develop a plan tomorrow for have all students in. I'm not sure without collaborating with everyone involved, that's the smartest idea to do. So we're looking for people's input, ideas, and we want to really shift the thinking from what we can't do to what we can do. Ms. Regan, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that piece.
Go ahead, Mrs. Reagan, are you there?
Sorry about that.
I think she's
Yeah, I could not unmute the mic while I was sharing my screen. I couldn't find that. I just want to remind parents again that that survey is out there. We are seeking your input. We certainly described a few scenarios, and we're taking, some of those ideas from other districts that we're collaborating with. And we welcome any other ideas that parents have or stakeholders. Committee, you have the parent survey and the questions as well. We hope the survey will close on the 19th, so Friday, the Friday of the vacation, and we hope to share that data with you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the committee shortly thereafter.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Regan. Now I'd like to open it up to my colleagues for any questions, comments, or discussion. We'll start with Mr. Cutlass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Mr. Malone. That was an excellent presentation. And it seems to me that he has an outstanding and complete understanding of all the issues involved with this pandemic and where we have to go. And I thought that was great. But I'm wondering, is it possible or is it too soon to give any specifics about what's next? Like, are we going to extend the day? Can we do that now, or is it too soon, or when can we do that?
Great point, Mr. Cutlass. I think one of the things, that's why we sent out in the parent survey and gave them some scenarios and also gave them an opportunity to think about different scenarios, whether that's having students all in on the current schedule, taking the current 4-hour in-person learning schedule and the rest of the day remote, but have all students come in, not on 3 days on one week and 2 days on the next, but all students all 5 days. That's one option to ramp up that piece. We have a piece in there that kind of identifies a longer day, but not a full day, approximately about 45 minutes to an hour longer of a day. It's kind of silent on whether we might do lunch in conjunction with that or not, but it would be a longer day on top of all students in all 5 days. And then we look at the option of having students in every day for a full day of school. We'd have to resolve the staffing issue would be the biggest issue on that piece, but we have some ideas to think about that. But I also think there's a lot of room here for a ramp up of moving through stages where we increase at this point for a couple of weeks to date X, increase further if we're ready, check for safety, check how that worked, rethink about how that is, rather than flipping a switch at some random date and just say, all students are back in every day for a full day of school. I think we have some opportunities to have a ramp up piece that will get us there. We could divide it up by grade levels, by schools, all kinds of options on that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Malone. I like that idea of ramping up like that. I think that's a good way to go. And I appreciate all your efforts, and thank you very much, Mrs. Regan, as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cutlass. Mrs. Demos?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Mr. Malone, you just answered the question I had. I was thinking that, excuse me, with the going to increase the time on learning, if we took into account that maybe we could be looking at different, different grade levels, different buildings, so that what we might be able to do logistically at, say, the K to 4 buildings may not look the same as the, high school does. And are we open to that? Because I think that's important too, because what might be an obstacle in one building, grade level, I wouldn't say building to building, but grade level, high school may look a lot different than elementary. So I appreciate that we're thinking of that. And I have to say kudos. I know as a parent, I just filled out that survey, and I appreciated the fact that there was an open-ended response at the bottom for us to share any thoughts that may not have been brought up by the committee that was on there as an option. And I think that's important so that we're hearing all voices out there, and the community knows that we are open to any and all feedback, and we'll take it into consideration. But thank you very much for this thorough presentation. Again, I appreciate all your time and effort.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos. Mr. Stadman?
Just say thank you for the thorough presentation, and definitely gives us a lot to think about. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stadman. And Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'll echo some of what my colleagues shared. I mean, one, I like the stepped approach, whether it's being creative for a grade or a school, looking at all 5 days, but not full days, looking at extending the day. I think putting all the options on the table and then trying to take steps so that we have more in-person learning. I think that's us doing the best we can for these kids. And, it's funny, obviously I'm on the meetings on Monday, and sometimes the discussion fascinates me because we say if we do A, oh, well, the challenges are B, C, and D. But if we do D, the challenges are E, F, and G. It's a lot more complex than just put the kids back in the school and everyone's going to be fine. I appreciate all how thoughtful the committee has been. I appreciate how thoughtful Brenda and Chris have been in laying this out, and hopefully giving the community some things to think about. And hopefully we get some good feedback from the parents on the things that they want to see. And I would say the one thing that really jumped out at me in the presentation, and Chris, you mentioned it a couple times, was time. And I don't want to lose sight of time. Every day that passes, every week that passes, we're losing an opportunity to do something for these children. And yes, it involves some risk, and yes, it is uncomfortable for some, but I'm glad we're looking at all these things because I think it is so critical for these children. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'd also like to share that about the time. As someone that spent some time, people, I realize they've learned the value of that a long time ago. So I couldn't agree more with you, Superintendent. I had a couple questions. The pool testing, is that both students and staff, or is it just for students, or?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It looks like there'll be an initial test opportunity for the first week that is usually focused on staff, a trial. Then it would be open to staff and students. There is a waiver and a sign up that parents would have to do for their children. The actual swabbing in the sample test of itself is actually minimal. It really is just a quick nasal swipe with a swab, and then that goes into a tube. The pool is usually no more than 10 individuals. It's a lot more of the coding of the tubes and the database of what happens once they're tested and the follow-up after that, in bringing on an additional testing element by next now for a rapid test for individuals that may be positive. A whole pool comes back. Those individuals have to go through a rapid testing process now, and that would involve our nurses doing that. So there's some layered pieces in this. It's manageable. It's important. We're going to figure it out, but it's going to be a lift. And right now, everybody's going in 100 different directions, and we're trying to find a way to get everybody kind of going in one direction, which is how do we think this through? How do we do it at a pace and in a way that people feel safe, that people feel confident? But the things that we're seeing are really a result of our kids not being in school, and we want to get them in school safely and get them in school for as many minutes as we possibly can.
Great, and that's a actually wonderful segue. My other question was, we'll still be able to maintain our remote learning academy while increasing that?
That's correct. We have a big commitment to the Remote Learning Academy. Those teachers are doing an outstanding job. The feedback we have from the parents is very positive. It's in our best interest to make sure the students in the Remote Learning Academy are getting the best possible education. Because as I said, they are us. They're going to be returning in person with us. So even though we may be looking at going in person, and remote learning students may not take advantage of that, which we hope some of them do, but many may not. We're going to return to some form of normalcy sooner than later. And we need to make sure all of our students have the best opportunity to excel at education, regardless if they're remote or hybrid or all in person.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Malone. I appreciate once again your effort and your update and your report. With that, we're going to move on to our final new business item, and that's me laying out for the community our duty to evaluate the superintendent on a yearly basis. So on or about April 30th, we'll distribute the superintendent evaluation documents to each school committee member. On or about May 7th, the superintendent himself will to distribute and review progress of goals and his self-assessment. On or about May 10th to 28th, individual school committee members will consult with the superintendent to review the goals and self-assessment data during the time period of May 11th through May 29th. On or about June 1st, school committee members will submit their individual evaluations of the superintendent to the chairperson for analysis. The chair will then summarize the data for the final superintendent evaluation report. And on or about June 9th, the school committee chair will deliver both oral and written summary of the superintendent evaluation in a public session. So that is that update. With that being said, we have the school committee matters of interest this evening, and we'll start with Mr. Cutlass.
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Demos.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I just had a few thoughts while I was preparing for the meeting, and I just was looking to see if maybe we could talk a little bit about getting an update for us on extracurricular happenings in the buildings. I know I have a pretty good grasp on how the sports are working, and the MIAA has a good grasp on that, as well as the administration, coaches, Mr. Druin. But I feel as though like the other extracurricular access, are we having like equitable access to in-person experiences for those kiddos that are in like clubs and activities within our buildings? I'd like to just kind of have a little bit of a conversation around that. And I'd also like to put it out there that we should start thinking and talking about the high school seniors, their activities and their graduations. People may think that it's early, but I had a senior go through last year and it came and went before you knew it. And I have another one coming up this time and they're already talking about it. So I think it would behoove us in the administration to start being proactive in our conversations. Well, we can't necessarily foreshadow what it's going to look like with numbers and things like that, but I think we should start having plans of the future dates for these kiddos.
Okay,
that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stadman?
I have nothing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I have a quick one for you. It's just something that I saw and I thought it was appropriate for the meeting tonight. And it's just, students are not falling behind. They are surviving a pandemic. Educators, you are not behind. You are also surviving a pandemic. And thank you for every ounce you give. And, I read that and it made me think of just how challenging this year has been. And I know, we live in a world where everybody wants everything like right now, and everyone wants everything to be perfect. And I think sometimes it's important to step back and say, wow, look at what we've done and look at what's been accomplished and look at how many good things have happened this year, considering how challenging the year has been. So Chris, Brenda, your leadership team, the principals, athletic director, everyone that's been involved and been pulling and working needlessly and tirelessly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think it's amazing what we've accomplished. And I know we hear a lot of complaints, but I, for one, am very impressed and very proud of the things that have gone on in our school system this year. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Well said. And I would just like to send a final thank you to our nurses who have done a tremendous job. Like I said, I hope we can get back to normal, Chris, and have some meetings where we can actually have people at. Leads me to my second point. It has not gone unnoticed to have our principals hang out with us here during these school committee meetings lately. And on behalf of the committee, once again, would like to extend our gratitude for all that you guys are doing, along with the teachers, to as Mr. Wilson said, to provide, a good opportunity and, step back and be part of the solution. And we hope that we can continue to make progress to creating an environment where we think our students are being able to do the best that they can. So That's all I have. I have our last order of business, future school committee and subcommittee meeting dates. Looks like March 10th is the public hearing and regular meeting. And then we will have our April 14th, 2021 reorganization meeting and regular scheduled meeting. At this time, I'll yield the floor to Mr. Cutlass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's meeting. Mr. Cutlass, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Demos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Stadman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. Thank you all for participating tonight.
Thank you.